Welcome back to the war. But this isn't the war you learned about in school, where battles were fought with bullets, tanks, and planes. No, there's a darker side to World War II, one where soldiers weren't just armed with weapons, but with something far more dangerous: drugs. And not just any drugs. Powerful stimulants that turned ordinary men into relentless fighting machines. Today, we're diving deep into the secret pharmacological experiments that transformed Nazi soldiers into what some might call super soldiers. But this story isn't just about drugs. It's about the lengths the Nazi regime went to, not just to win battles, but to dominate the very minds of their troops. As we unravel this chilling tale, we'll explore the human cost of these experiments and how they forever changed the course of the war and the lives of those who fought it. So what happens when you mix a twisted ideology with chemical warfare? Stay with us, because what you're about to discover is both shocking and terrifying. Setting the stage. Let's start at the beginning. The year is 1939, and Germany is gearing up for what would become the deadliest conflict in human history. The Nazi war machine is hungry for victory, but it's not just relying on superior tactics and weapons. Behind the scenes, German scientists are hard at work on a new kind of weapon, one that you don't find on the battlefield, but in a pill bottle. The German military had long been obsessed with finding ways to enhance their soldiers' performance. They wanted soldiers who didn't need sleep, who didn't tire, who could march for days and fight without fear. And they thought they found the answer in a little white pill called Pervitin. The miracle pill. Pervitin. Pervitin was no ordinary pill. It was a powerful methamphetamine, similar to what we know today as crystal meth. It was marketed to the German public as a miracle drug, a cure for everything from depression to low energy. But it wasn't long before the military saw its potential. Imagine this. You're a soldier on the front lines, cold, exhausted, and terrified. You haven't slept in days and the enemy is closing in. Then you're handed a pill. Within minutes, your fatigue fades, your fears vanish, and you feel invincible. This was the promise of Pervitin. The Nazi high command was so impressed with the drug's effects that they began distributing it to their troops on a massive scale. In fact, during the early stages of the Blitzkrieg, the lightning-fast invasion of Poland, France, and the Low Countries, Pervitin was handed out like candy. Soldiers popped these pills to stay awake for days on end, marching relentlessly and fighting with a newfound ferocity. But while Pervitin gave the Nazis an edge in the short term, it came with a dark side that few anticipated. The dark side of Pervitin. At first, Pervitin seemed like a miracle. Soldiers felt invincible, their morale was high, and the Nazi war machine rolled over Europe with terrifying speed. But what goes up must come down. The high of Pervitin was followed by a brutal crash. Soldiers who had been awake for days suddenly found themselves in the grip of extreme fatigue, paranoia, and even hallucinations. Some became addicted, needing more and more of the drug just to function. And in the heat of battle, this led to catastrophic consequences. There are countless stories of soldiers who, strung out on Pervitin, made reckless decisions, ignored orders, or even turned violent against their own comrades. The very drug that was supposed to make them super soldiers was, in many cases, turning them into liabilities. But the Nazis didn't stop with Pervitin. As the war dragged on and the situation grew more desperate, their experiments with drugs became even more extreme. Experimenting with hell, D9. As the war turned against Germany, the Nazi leadership became more desperate for a miracle to turn the tide. And so they turned to an even more potent cocktail of drugs. Enter D9, a drug cocktail that combined cocaine, methamphetamine, and a powerful painkiller. D9 was designed to create the ultimate super soldier, one who could march 55 miles without rest, fight without fear, and ignore pain. It was tested on prisoners in the Sachsenhausen concentration camp, who were forced to march until they collapsed. The results were horrifying. But the Nazis were convinced they were onto something. Plans were made to distribute D9 to the entire Wehrmacht, but by the time the drug was ready, it was too late. The Allies were closing in, and Germany's defeat was inevitable. D9 remained a footnote in history, a glimpse into the madness of a regime willing to sacrifice anything and anyone for victory. Adolf Hitler's drug use. But it wasn't just the soldiers on the front lines who were caught in the grip of dangerous drugs. At the very top of the Nazi regime, Adolf Hitler himself was also deeply entangled in a web of pharmaceutical dependence, a fact that would have profound implications for the course of the war. By the early 1940s, Hitler was suffering from a range of health problems: chronic stomach pains, insomnia, and severe anxiety. To combat these ailments, his personal physician, Dr. Theodor Morell, prescribed him a staggering array of drugs. Morell was something of a quack, but Hitler trusted him implicitly, and this trust would lead to the Führer being pumped full of an alarming concoction of substances. Hitler's daily regimen included a mix of vitamins, opiates, and hormone injections, but perhaps the most notorious was the drug Eucadol, an incredibly potent opioid that's chemically similar to heroin. This wasn't just about easing pain, it was about maintaining a certain mental and physical state that Hitler believed was essential to his leadership. Reports from those close to Hitler describe how his mood and behavior became increasingly erratic as the war progressed. He would go through wild mood swings, from bouts of manic energy where he seemed unstoppable, to deep depressive episodes where he could barely function. Some historians believe that these drugs contributed to his increasingly paranoid and delusional decision-making, especially in the later years of the war. In fact, by 1944, Hitler was taking multiple injections a day, including methamphetamine, which gave him a temporary boost of energy and focus. But like the soldiers on Pervitin, the effects of these drugs were short-lived, and the crashes were severe. The more the war turned against Germany, the more Hitler relied on these substances to keep going. The man who was supposed to be leading the Third Reich to a 1,000-year reign was, in reality, often under the influence, making critical decisions in a haze of drugs. Some of his most disastrous military orders, like the refusal to retreat during key battles, might have been influenced by his chemically altered state of mind. In the end, Hitler's drug use was a mirror of the Nazi regime itself, promising power and invincibility, but ultimately leading to destruction and ruin. As the Allies closed in on Berlin, Hitler's physical and mental state was a shadow of his former self, a tragic and ironic end for a man who once imagined himself as the master of the world. The Führer's dependence on drugs didn't just impact him, it reverberated through the entire Nazi war effort, leading to catastrophic decisions that hastened the downfall of the Third Reich. It's a sobering reminder that even the most powerful men can be brought low by their own weaknesses. The aftermath and legacy. The use of drugs like Pervitin and D9 didn't end with the fall of Nazi Germany. In the aftermath of the war, Allied forces discovered the extent of the Nazis' drug experiments, and some of these substances found their way into other military programs around the world. But the legacy of these drugs is far from glorious. The soldiers who were dosed with Pervitin suffered long after the war ended. Many struggled with addiction, mental health issues, and physical ailments caused by their reliance on these drugs. What was once seen as a path to victory turned out to be a road to ruin. And what about today? The idea of chemically enhanced soldiers hasn't gone away. In fact, the research continues, albeit under more controlled circumstances. But the story of the Nazi super soldiers serves as a stark warning. When we try to play God with human biology, the consequences can be devastating. Final thoughts. The story of Nazi super soldiers on drugs is a chilling reminder of the extremes to which the Nazi regime was willing to go to achieve its twisted goals. It's a tale of ambition, desperation, and ultimately the tragic cost of a war fought not just on the battlefield, but within the minds and bodies of those who served. So what do you think? Could the use of drugs have really made a difference in the outcome of the war? Or were these so-called super soldiers just another failed experiment of a regime that was doomed from the start? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this video intriguing, we've got more incredible stories from history coming your way. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Check back in again soon. Salute.